Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis show. Happy anniversary, Camden.
Happy anniversary, Dad.
Thank you, thank you. What is the first anniversary? Is it paper? Is it
Ooh,
pencils? Uh,
I
eh,
see. I got another 16 months before I have to sort that out. So I have no clue. That's more your ballpark.
you better start playing. Well, yeah, but mine was 33 years ago, son. So I don't remember that crap. I mean,
Fair enough. We'll go with paper. Paper sounds right.
yeah, paper sounds good. Get a card, getting a
Well,
card.
happy paper anniversary.
Yeah, there you go. So episode number 52, and we thought we would you know, play around a little bit, try this, and see how it goes because we're going to play a couple of sound bites from some of our favorite shows. We got a handful of them picked out that we liked and thought thought they were fun and interesting and educational. I think is because that's what we're here to do, right? Is teach.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Make the world a better place every day. Always do good. What other sound bites can I throw out there while I'm thinking about it, right?
Communication.
Communication, protect the golden egg. Going back, that always, by the way, and for those of you who don't know, whenever you say communication, protect the golden egg always has to follow that. It's just kind of a rule.
Of
Rugby.
course.
Yeah. So, I thought we would go in chronological order because
Sounds like a plan.
alphabetical order would be really confusing. And then,
You go by guest or title.
uh, yeah, that would really mess me up if we did that because it was hard enough figuring out the sound bites and doing that work. By the way, thank you, Camden, for pulling all of those. And yeah, so we're gonna start off with episode 8, Shackleton. Camden, you want to give just a quick little prelude to that before we play the soundbite, or do you want to
Yeah.
play a soundbite and then talk?
I think the soundbite would be better first. Kind of sets the tone a little bit.
All right, I'm all about tone setting.
Talked about the noise of the ice wrecking the ship beneath them, and they can't do anything about it. And they go through, I think, 2 or 3 different false evacuations where they grab everything and get off the ship, and then it doesn't break, so they get back on because it's the only shelter they have.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, I think you and I talk about this probably once every month or so. Just how insane that story is. What those men went through, how they were able to survive, how every single one of them was somehow able to survive one of the craziest situations that has ever happened. And not only that, which I think is one of the most interesting things about that story so much, is that Shackleton had the premonition to sell the photography and video rights to everything. So not only do you get to read this amazing story, but you get to see these pictures of the ship, this huge ship, just being lifted up completely out of the water by this ice, and it's just stuck there. And all you can see is white for everything around because it's just ice and snow everywhere. But then there's this big old ship. It's just such an amazing story, and not even to get into the leadership side of things, which is like the whole nother level of it.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, good grief. Pick the book up to read the story. The Endurance is the book, and I mean you could also read Shackleton's account of it, which gives a little bit different perspective. But the book Endurance is just amazing, and the story is just utterly amazing. And if you're into anything about leadership,
Mm-hmm.
man, if you haven't read, at least read Endurance, which by the way, for those of you like me, it does have pictures in it, so that is helpful. They're nice and glossy, and they have a
Some
little.
beautiful pictures of the dogs they took down there.
Oh yeah, yeah, but
Oh, except
it
that's a sad.
is.
That makes me sad though. Oh, sorry. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, survival mode.
Yep.
Uh, but it's just an amazing story and leadership and human will to survive. Uh, and my favorite piece of it is it goes back to it's not what Shackleton did there, it's what he did before. And it's how he selected the team and how he handpicked the team to do that. Because if he'd just taken everybody that was thrown at him or everybody that volunteered, it'd been a lot different story, guaranteed.
Yeah, and I think the other piece of that, to take that another step further, is how he was able to integrate all of those different personalities. Just like I think sports teams are a great way to try to pull this analogy out of, you can have so many different personalities in the room, and you as a coach, you have to be able to build up the guys that need to be built up, tear down the guys that need to be teared down, and not mix those up. And not to mention making sure that the right guys are in the right hotel rooms together and any other thing in between. And then imagine doing that into a compact boat where you're going to be stuck for for a year. And then he goes through and he's able to do all of that and piece people together and keep people away from each other that need to be kept away from each other. But when you read the story, they don't hide it. There's a lot of animosity that was still there with a lot of the guys, but because of their belief in Shackleton and their respect for Shackleton, he was able to keep all of these different egos in check and make sure that everything came out okay, because they're all focused on the end result instead of bickering with each other.
And one other key component, though, Camden, and that's they all had a common purpose, and they were fixated on that, and that purpose really. So not only was it they trusted him as a leader, and he trusted them to perform. I hear the trust triad coming.
There you go.
It was, and Shackleton trusted himself. They had a common mission to accomplish, and that common mission pulled them together. It went from making it to the South Pole to surviving and taking care of each other, because the right people, he had the right, Jim Collins' book, again, and it's about business, but it applies in all things. Right people in the right seat on the right bus. And in this case, it was a wooden ship, steam-powered wooden ship that was, down in the Arctic Ocean that got locked in. And one of those things, you can't always trust Mother Nature to do what you want her to do. So,
oh yeah, and I think the other piece of that, as we're talking about, the different personalities and the leadership traits of it, is I still think just the most interesting little tidbit that kind of goes beyond the actual story, because the story is so fascinating, is the fact that there is only 2 men who didn't get awarded whatever the British civilian naval officer, whatever that special award was that they got, that was the highest they could get for what they were doing. And one of the guys is the guy who literally saved their lives about 15 times over, because he was a freaking engineer. But him and Shackleton didn't click. And so even though they were both able to work together and go through all of this, when it was over, he's, I'm not giving that guy a freaking medal. He doesn't deserve it. And it was all a personal thing. But it shows you how the personal aspects can feel so important when you're back in society, living among all the civilized people, not when you're out fending for your life. At that point, that personality does not matter near as much. What matters is the common purpose, just like you said.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, that was a fun one. And I tell you what, we could talk that story all day.
Oh yeah.
Amazing story. So if you haven't read it, go out there and find it. So episode 12, had a good buddy of mine on, and I'm going to play this clip.
For me, leadership comes down to essentially three basic. Leadership is being in front and making hard decisions. Leadership is leading by example, doing things with your teams, with your teammates, with your subordinates, and with the people who lead you. That you would want to be yourself. And I think the last thing about leadership is, for me, is sacrifice. I think being a servant leader is probably the biggest thing you can do as a leader. And those are probably my 3 biggest tenets of leadership. That defines leadership for me. Being a servant leader, leading by example, doing other things that other people wouldn't want to do. And of course, being a good subordinate as well. Sometimes leadership means taking a step back.
Yeah, so that was Ed Bachel, who just a handful of months before then, the time we had him on, had just done a successful exit. He had built his business, Viking, built that business up, was a very successful business owner and operator, and decided it was time to change his course. And he was currently, at that point, working for the business that had bought his business as they transitioned in. But there was a great piece. Ed Bachel is a great leader. That he is the reason that company was able to be as successful as it was, and he was able to do a successful exit. So.
And it's no surprise at all from the way you listen to him talk about leadership. And, I know we kind of fell off, I think probably the first 20, maybe even 25 episodes, I was asking that every single time. And I think we work it in still somewhat about what does leadership mean to you? And I think he still has the best answer, because it just boils down to being a servant leader, which we now say is a little bit redundant because all leaders should be a servant leader. But putting your team before yourself, sacrificing for your team, and then taking on the jobs, not being afraid to pick up the shovel and get in and do the dirty work. Those three simple components can get you so far as a leader, and can help you to lead a business successfully and transfer all the way out of it too.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the reasons other than him being a really good friend of mine, I wanted to have him on the show was that he had done that. I mean, you don't hear that story. Everybody talks about it in the startup world, exit strategy and this, that, and the other. But here's a guy, who retired from the Air Force, decided to start a business because he thought he could provide a better product to the government, and did for several years, and created a highly valuable product, valuable enough that another business said, man, we can increase our success by buying your business and adding your capabilities to our capabilities. And that's what happened. So,
we talk a lot about misconceptions and kind of like ironic perspectives that people have around business. And I think one of those, a lot of those come around business exits and that type of way of, it's like, oh, shoot, my company got bought out and it's terrible and it's all this. And it's like, that is a pretty decent way, if you're going about it the right way, to be moving on through business. You're not going to have that job forever, no matter what. Would you rather get fired, get your company bought, or die on the job? There's obviously more options in there, but it's something that I think people have a lot of time have that misperception that it's this huge negative thing or it has to be this huge negative thing. It's not necessarily that, because you can, if you are a good leader and you bring your team forward and you build an organization properly, even if someone comes in and buys it, even there's a different person in charge, the organization is still going to operate properly because you designed it that way and you built in the character that it needs to operate successfully.
Yeah, well, and it reminds me of this other thing, that's this misconception that's out there that people do. You call them people that sell their companies sellouts. And it's like, really? And not in a good way. It's a derogatory term. And it's like, shouldn't you be like applauding their success? It's one of the 7 deadly sins, envy, because that's what it really comes from. Is people are jealous that this person or this group of people created a successful business, and somebody liked what they were doing enough to write them a check and pay them back for it. Wow, how cool is that? Because guess what? Guess who accepted all the risk? Guess who took all the chances?
The business owner, the guy who founded it.
Yeah.
So he or she deserves that revenue, quite frankly. But then also, I think here's the other piece of it. It's earned, exactly. But here's the big piece of it that I think we're not even touching on. And it's kind of the big picture stuff when we talk about why entrepreneurship is so important and what kind of impact you can have by doing business properly and, solving a problem for the market and selling it, and how all these different things can coexist. Is what are you always trying to do as an entrepreneur? Is affect change in the market or affect change with your service. You're trying to have an impact on the market. What better way to have an impact than for you to perfect a widget on a statewide level, let's call it, and then having a national company come in and ship that out to every other state afterwards? And yes, you get to make money off, and that's all great. But think about the change you're affecting. Like, it's getting spread out, and obviously, it doesn't always go that well when things are getting transferred up the wire like that. But you are affecting that change on a grander scale. It's almost like, imagine, I saw this once on a Shark Tank the other day. It was a woman who had this great invention that somebody stole from her in this big company, and it was out. And somebody made a comment of like, well, shoot, it means it was a great product. You solved the problem. And you solved that problem so well that somebody decided to cheat you. Now, can you focus on the cheating fact, or can you focus on the fact that you solved the problem? And you technically are the reason that that change is being affected around the country now. Yeah, you might not be profiting off it in that case, but still, you're affecting change.
Well, I was at Dave Ramsey's Entree Leadership this week outside of Nashville. And without digging through my notes to see who actually said it, I thought this was a really great comment. And as entrepreneurs innovate and then imitate, because you innovate something, you innovate a solution, that's your innovation, and then you've got to imitate it in order to put it into production. I mean, unless there's just one problem you're solving, it's not a very good business model if only one person's buying it. So you innovate and then imitate.
Well, it reminds me of so many different things. And, when you read different behavioral economics books, and they talk about this awesome study that found it, if you give your kid, random one, you give your kid $1 every Sunday after they make their bed, then your kid is going to grow up to be successful, yada, yada. And then the issue always comes of, okay, how do we actually do anything with this information? How do we take this study, boil down the mechanism that's actually doing something there, and then apply it on a grander scale out in the natural environment? And that's where, they'll talk about how you literally get like 99.99% of things never make it out into the real world because there's no way of replicating that study. There's no way of replicating that finding or affecting any of that change.
Yeah. Or it's back to, your theory of the garage invention is because I had a problem in my garage and I fixed it. Guess what? It never got imitated. So that innovation just stays in my garage.
Exactly.
All
Great.
right.
Well, let's go on over to the next one.
Ooh, this was a good one. Episode 17. It's hard to believe it was that early in the year. Because this was innovation, and we have not imitated this one yet.
So we went around and we used ourselves as test dummies. Yeah, we went around and used ourselves as test dummies. We tried out a variety of different treatment modalities on ourselves, and we took the ones that worked the best and had the most research behind them, and we put them together into a comprehensive treatment protocol that can address the root cause of traumatic brain injuries, PTSD, and depression.
Yeah, and it's not like we were just trying anything that we read on the internet. We looked for peer-reviewed data prior to seeking out those treatments.
So first off, Jeff Hoagland and Sam Peterson, to put that into context, two EOD, former EOD buddies of mine who are doing just what we just talked about. So that was a hell of a segue we just did, Camden.
Oh yeah.
They are innovating, and they are innovating by taking existing treatments and processes and using them in a different way to make solutions, to create a solution, a solving problem for PTS and TBI, post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury. Their process is at least initial data on themselves, as they said in that soundbite, and on a couple of other individuals now since that show, have made not just hidden symptoms, but cured the damage in their brain, which is unheard of to this point. So amazing guys that weren't afraid to do the hard work and move forward and take some risks.
Yeah, I think this is one of my favorite episodes as I was going through and revisiting it, trying to pull these different clips. And I think what makes this episode so great is how many different entrepreneurial lessons you can pull from it. And there's so many great entrepreneurial lessons, and where you're talking about the transition from the military to entrepreneurship, any of this different stuff. But then it also is such an amazing story that they have. and the things they've gone through and the progress that has been made, and the impact that they could have with the type of work that they're doing, that on its own is enough to get excited about and enough to talk about. And then you add in the way they're doing the business, the way they're going about this innovation, and it's just so inspiring to listen to them talk about it.
Yeah, it is, and to make it even more fun, like I said, this was our first dual guest, and then also it was on location because they decided they wanted to come down to see the LTO podcast studio, which was a lot of fun to have them here in the house at LTO headquarters, and had to do a little modification of the studio, and still got decent audio out of it, which was good, innovating again.
There you go.
And that they're as an update, they're currently I think they may be at the tail end of going through Rocky's Venture Club accelerator. So they're still doing really well, still moving forward. They also received a SBIR or SBIR grant, small business innovation and research from the Air Force. So they got a little bit of funding there to move forward. They should be presenting.
That's big grant money that opens doors to much bigger grant money. I've looked at those for some agricultural stuff.
Yeah, 100%. And they should be wrapping up their phase 1 of that and submitting the results of phase 1 either at the end of this month, or they did at the end of last month, to move into phase 2, which is great news, because this isn't just solution sets for military. This is solution sets for anybody that has had a TBI, whether you're in a car wreck, a football player, a rugby player. This is groundbreaking stuff that can heal the brain and not have these concussion-driven injuries like we've recently, in the last 5 years, learned about from the NFL.
Mm-hmm. And I think the exciting thing, as our theme has kind of come out to be, talking about affecting change and that type of stuff, it keeps coming up about how that's the thing also with when you look at medical innovation, especially these type of things. The really exciting part of it is we don't know where that ends also, is they could come in and be addressing PTS and TBIs. But then what they're doing, and because what are they, they're really affecting treatments on anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, those type of things that are caused by those injuries.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're solving and curing those things for the injury, that means you can also extrapolate that out, at least to some extent or another, to affect other pieces of it. So it's really exciting, honestly, to talk about the possible impact that they could be having, not to even mention the effects they've already had on the folks that they've volunteered for their treatment so far.
Oh yeah. I mean, when you think about it, you're because the solution set for so many things that are wrong with our bodies is, here, take this pill, and we mask that symptom. Mm-hmm. We rarely address curing the symptom. Until it gets to the point, like a leg injury or something like that, right? Or back injury. Here, take some Motrin, take this muscle relaxant, those sort of things, until it hits a point that the narcotic, you either get addicted to it or it no longer works, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of our medical practice, what we do now. And that's what we've been doing. The VA, among other organizations, other medical organizations, have been doing for head injuries. Take these pills, take this, here, try this one with this one and that one with that one, and mixing them up and trying to hide the symptoms rather than cure the problem. And that's what's so great about what they're doing with the Invictus project.
Yeah, and before you send us over to the next one, I think that also speaks to something we talk about a lot, which is talking about the actual problem, solving the real problem, not putting a Band-Aid on it. And that's what they're really doing there, and that's what's so impressive about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see here.
Who we got next?
This person needs no introduction. I just had to say that for somebody. And my buddy and business partner, Devon Hankins, throwing out some serious wisdom in this little soundbite.
Everything that we're intended to create is already in us, right? That idea you had, that's not anything new. It's been with you, Cam, right? It has been, you have been messing with that idea for a long time, even maybe when you weren't conscious of it. There was something that kept pinging you, kept bothering you, okay, that would make you uncomfortable. And I think as time goes on, and I think your dad can speak to this, you become more and more uncomfortable, right? And that is the universe trying to tell you, take the step, take the step.
Wow. Yeah, no, Devon is great. She's one of our two or three that we've had on a couple times now, and she's always a great guest and great person to talk to. But I think she taps into so much there when it talks about your potential and what you're going to do with your life and where you want to be. It's all inside of you. All of these different ideas and things. There's a reason that we talk about garage innovation, is because when it really comes down to it, you were the one who was annoyed with the problem with your lawnmower, and you're the person who figured out that you could put a bag on the back of it so you don't get covered in grass. You know, whatever your innovation is, you were the person that was running through that idea the whole time.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I think it's great that, as she said, it's there and it's just itching at you.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, at some point, and I talk about this, you know, when you talk about sales, you know, at what point is your potential client, your sales lead, if you will, does their problem set, the pain of their problem set, equal the solution set that you're selling?
Mm-hmm.
You know, is my pain $10 or is my pain at the $100? You know, and at what point am I willing to spend money to fix my pain? And that's what she's talking about with that idea in your head, that itch kind of working its way. And at what point is it like, okay, I'm going to give this a shot?
Yeah, you know, it reminds me a lot when she was talking about Stephen Pressfield in The War of Art, that I almost messed up and said Art of War. No, The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. And he talks about resistance, and we've talked about resistance a few times on this. But when she says it gets you more and more uncomfortable, the more important it is to you. And that's one of the cornerstones of resistance. Is it gets stronger when it's something that is bigger, when it's something that's better, when it's something that can benefit you more, all of these different things. You're going to feel more and more of it when you're going towards that. You're not going to feel much resistance when you go and work your job at McDonald's. Even though you might hate that job, you're not going to feel the resistance because you're going there and you're making your money and you're living your life. You're going to feel the resistance when you're waking up in the morning trying to start your own business or write your own book. That's when it hits you, because it's you stepping out of your comfort zone and going right into that resistance. And like Devon said, you're going to have more and more the more important it is to you.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I think it's because you get so passionate about it, and it's so much. It can be so much a part of you, and really, you know, if you think about it, if you got an idea, a solution that you're turning into a business, it becomes part of you. You know, it's what you love to do. You know, I was listening to a talk this week by Christy Wright. She's one of Dave Ramsey's personalities, and she was talking about that, and that the fact that it can become overwhelming, all consuming, not overwhelming,
Mm-hmm.
that's the wrong word, but all consuming, because you love to do it. And because you love to do it, you just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. No, man, and next thing you know, you've worked 18 hours a day for the last month, and you don't even feel like it because you just love doing it. Now, there's some implications to that. Oh, by the way, there might be some other people in your life. But the point is, if it's inside of you and you see it growing and evolving and creating a solution that helps people,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that becomes your passion and your love of doing it. So it's easy to do. I think you overcome the resistance eventually.
Right.
The resistance is there initially. You know, if you think about, you know, going to physics, going hard physics here, you know, that object the initial inertia physics. Well, I'm going back to like sophomore year in college, at least.
This is that moment where I remember that you studied engineering, and
Yeah,
because I just think special forces all the time that engineering gets left out so much.
Well, I got a piece of paper on the wall that said I did it once. But that initial inertia, if you think about this though, and everything that you've ever tried to move, that initial inertia friction, and I can't remember the exact name of release friction or whatever, it has a physical name, is harder than once it's moving.
Mm-hmm.
So think about pushing a car. You know, when you first start pushing the car, it's really, really hard to get moving. But once you get inertia going, the wheels start turning and you get to build up a little momentum, it's a lot easier. You know, I always talk about spinning the flywheel, you know, because spinning the flywheel, that first pull on the flywheel is always really hard to get it moving. But once you start spinning that flywheel and it starts going and starts going and starts going, you build up momentum and it's going faster and faster and faster, and you overcome that resistance that's keeping you from moving forward.
Right, and I think the physics metaphor really brings it all. Ooh, metaphor analogy.
I don't know. You're the grammar guy.
I think we're gonna go with analogy on this one, but I'm not 100% on that. I'll go dig up some of my notes from Miss Odenbaugh back in high school and write those up on the wall here, so I'm safe from now on. But continue with the physics analogy there. When you're looking at it like that, that's also, I think, illustrates a big piece of what resistance is. Because at first I was gonna get on you because you said you get through it, but you don't really ever get through it. You're just having that momentum and you're moving forward. Resistance is always there. No matter how hard you've been working, how successful you've been, you're still going to feel that resistance. And it's never really going to go away. And you just kind of have to accept that. And it's just something you live with and something you have to push through. And it gives you something to fight against, really.
Yeah. I mean, if you didn't have friction, resistance, it'd be perpetual, right?
Exactly.
Once and it just goes. And it goes on forever and ever and ever.
And just like with physics, that's not how it works with business or anything else, right?
Well, I was just going to put a little footnote on that. If anybody out there knows how to do that, give me a call, and we'll talk setting up the business. Okay?
You got some engines to build?
Yeah, I kind of thinking perpetual motion engines. I'd be all for that. Yeah, that's LTO Enterprises. Give me a shout.
There we go. There's the new business model, right?
The perpetual business model. Well, it's funny. It's funny. So hold on, because Simon Sinek talks about the infinite game and having the infinite game in business. If you think about it, the perpetual motion. I'll have to throw this question at him, here this weekend. Maybe is if I have an infinite game, can I accomplish infinity with perpetual success of my business? Woo.
Well, I mean, not to step on his toes or anything, but I would think, infinite's hard to say, but you can definitely get exponential success. I could say that much. Just keep building and building and building.
So his story is not talking about infinite success. It's talking about infinite business, building business for enduring purposes. And that, because when you accomplish one goal, you're not done. Our lives are finite, right? But you accomplish a goal, and then what? Do you stop? Or do you go again?
You got to keep going.
You got to keep going. That's what he's talking about when he's talking about the infinite business and the infinite game.
Mm-hmm. Always another problem to solve. And going back to another one of our big episodes, sigmoid performance curves. What do you got to do when you're up at the top of your curve? When you're performing at your best, you got to figure out a way to jump over to the next curve so you don't have to deal with that valley in the middle.
That's right. Flatten the valleys out.
Exactly.
Just like right now with the COVID.
Mm-hmm.
What did we do? We came down. Now we're going back up. So what's your business doing now? Now it's without going too much into the whole COVID thing. Now they're talking about shutting everything down again and doing this and doing that. So what are you doing for your business? What are you doing? Those of you who had your business shut down in March through April, open back up May, June, and even right now, because I know some of our businesses haven't been shut down, but they've been restricted here in Colorado. And no, by the way, the governor just did the executive order for mandatory masks out in public, sort of thing. And I won't get into all the exceptions, but there are exceptions. But it is, what are you going to do with your business? Hopefully you've learned some lessons in that curve, that downturn and coming back up and accelerated back out of it. But I'm really hoping that you're thinking about the old sigmoid curve and what you're going to do to leap to that next node, as opposed to dropping down in the valley and getting crushed again.
Well, and I would say even more so, did you learn lessons from all of the other failed businesses in this first round? Because we're going back in for a second round. So if you were able to just shut up and take the government money to cover yourself for that 3 months without actually innovating or changing anything, now you're seeing all those businesses who tried to do that and failed. Do you want to put your money on that again? Or are you going to be like these other businesses, because there's so many restaurants, anything else, that have just been able to find a way to innovate their business model and push themselves out so that they're able to stay operational. It's just like we talk about, so here, I'm going to spin this around a little bit. One of the interesting things that I've been hearing about and reading about a lot is you look at the COVID-19 pandemic as a economic interruption that is going to spur movement forward. You could put out any different crisis back, hundreds of years ago, pandemics especially, of course, that caused these huge amounts of innovation. I think if you go back to a lot of modern government for Western government came from the Black Plague in England, because they said, holy crap, we got to find out how to control all these people. Now, run with that conspiracy, whatever you want, whatever. But you have this huge interruption. And what you're having now, like we talked about at the very, episode 33, to throw out another great one for the archives. But when we talk about the coronavirus, what it's doing is we're jolting things forward along that technological curve. And what's going to happen during that is just like any other sort of economic change, where people will be left behind, businesses will be left behind. And so you have to look at it that way, and not just how am I going to survive now, but how am I going to survive in the future? Because it's going to change. And this is jumping things forward. There's an $8,000 robot out there that can flip burgers now. What's your price? There's all these different places that things are going to keep pulling stuff away, and the market's going to keep changing. And you got to be able to stay on top of it. Whether the market's going to change 15 years from now or next month or whenever, you got to be innovative. You got to be aggressive with it.
Yeah. Well, good point. And that's a good way. I think that's a good thing to wrap us around on, as opposed to running down the COVID curve, or up the COVID curve.
Well, because what's the emphasis we always get back to when we talk about COVID? Focus on what is in your control, create your own opportunity, and create your own success. And I think honestly, and I feel myself getting a little heated right now about it, I think that's something that's just been agitating personally over these times of people who still just want to sit, just roll over and play dead. It's not worth it. You're wasting time and wasting energy. Get up and do something. Get up and create the life that you want, right?
What else is there to say after that? Create the life you want. Seriously, quit your bitching. Get off your ass. Go do something. You really want a taste of it, because if you can't realize that you can change things, you can do things differently, you can create the life you want, man, until you realize that, keep taking those checks, man, and keep sitting around playing video games. Hopefully, you can keep your fingers crossed that they push out another one. But it ain't going to make you happy.
No.
So.
Oh, good. I'm glad we brought it back in with a little bit of the sternness there at the end. I think sometimes we miss that from Otis.
Yeah. Oh, you got fired up, and then you pushed my button, and it's like, all right, I'm coming through the screen on you. So, all right, Camden, what'd you learn?
So I loved what you said. Innovate, then imitate. I think that's just great. I had never heard that before. I think that makes a lot of sense, and puts the word imitate a little bit in different connotation than we're used to. But
Yeah.
I really like that as far as a means for doing business and expanding as an entrepreneur.
Oh, great. For me, I'm going to go big picture. I learned that, I learned that I could have a podcast with my son, my knucklehead number two, that I used to refer to him as. That's what all my friends know you as too. I never used to say Cannon is just knucklehead number two.
Oh yeah.
And really put out some good content and help people, and in a number of ways with their business and their life. And it's been first year's been fun. This next year, man, it's going to get better and better. More guests, more entrepreneurs, more leaders, and what I'm excited about is some of these entrepreneurs aren't necessarily what you would consider an entrepreneur, but when you peel the onion back, guess what they are? So, and I'll just leave that. How's that for a teaser?
Let's go.
For
That's
next
great.
season, the
Next
cliffhanger.
season.
That's our cliffhanger for the season.
Bum bum.
Dramatic music now.
All right. Well, great.
All
Well,
right,
thank
run us
y'all
out,
again.
King.
Oh, yep. Thank y'all again for listening to today's show. Special thanks to our sponsors, MASH, Military and Athletic Strength Hemp Oil, and Verbi Virtual Fundraising. You can check out episodes of the Cam and Otis Show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and check out a full archive at thecamandotusshow.buzzsprout.com. Cam and Otis Show is on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next week.
Hey, happy anniversary, Camden.
Happy anniversary.